Bill Carter, former New York Times media journalist for over 2 decades and author of The Late Shift and the War for Late Night. And Sean Gregory is here, senior sports correspondent for Time Magazine. Sean, walk us through what happens and why in the world was Aaron Rodgers back on McAfee's show today after yesterday Pat McAfee got in line and said, you know what, we're going to take a break for the rest of the season.
So just to recap as quickly as I can, last week, Pat McAfee, Aaron Rodgers on Pat McAfee's show insinuated that Jeffrey Epstein and Jimmy Kimmel had an association. Kimmel threatened to sue. Pat McAfee said, I kind of apologized, didn't apologize. Jimmy Kimmel gives in his monologue, attacks Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers doesn't really apologize for what's going on. And then Pat McAfee said, I'm done with this. No more politics. I don't like being in the middle of this. But Aaron Rodgers was back on Pat McAfee's show today talking about football only, to be fair. He talked about the retirement of Bill Belichick and Nick Saban, two Hall of Fame level coaches. So he was back on the show, but there was no conspiracy theories about vaccination today.
Bill, what is your reaction to this whole mess?
I think it's pretty outrageous. I mean, Jimmy Kimmel made jokes about Aaron because, Aaron Rodgers was saying crazy things about vaccines and Dr. Fauci and all kinds of conspiracy theories. And that's what late night hosts do. They make jokes about people in the news or prominent people. And I think Rodgers came on and thought, well, he'll be funny, too, and make a comment about, Jimmy being associated with Epstein, which is, not a joke. That's a smear. And that's a big difference. And especially because he was implying that he was associated with a pedophile, a serious, heinous crime. And I know Jimmy very well, and Jimmy is not going to sit back and take that. So he came after Rodgers, and he really threatened to sue him. And I think he really got the attention of people about what this guy was actually saying, which was a good part of this. But he also, exposed Disney, because Disney went days before they took this on. And basically, it underscores what's going on with networks and the corporations and everything, because they were afraid. They were afraid of, undermining Pat McAfee, another big investment of theirs. So it really put them in a bad spot. But there's no grading this out. I mean, what Rodgers did was flat wrong. And then you see he gets let go. He seems to pay the price for it. But no, a day later they think, the guy's really good about commenting on football, so let's bring him back.
Okay,
I think Rodgers should probably apologize, which he's not done.
Okay, then explain this to me. When Colin Kaepernick took a knee, I'm asking Sean, sorry. When Colin Kaepernick took a knee, they said it's anti-American. When LeBron James criticized Donald Trump, they told him to shut up and dribble. When Aaron Rodgers goes on Pat McAfee's show over and over, pushing conspiracy theories, pushing anti-vaccine rhetoric, people are going, let him just tell his truth.
Right. We wrote a story. Time wrote a story saying, maybe Aaron Rodgers should just stop talking now about stuff he isn't an expert on. And you're right, from certain segments of society, there's not the same pushback, which is very telling. And to Bill's point with Aaron Rodgers, what struck me about his appearance on Pat McAfee's show yesterday, which was rambling, in which he was, kind of explaining and putting forward more and more conspiracy theories. He did not apologize to Jimmy Kimmel for basically, calling him, in effect, a pedophile. And that's really striking. Aaron Rodgers blamed everybody else. He blamed people who ran with it. He's like, that's not what I meant. But what else could he have meant? So I think he lost a lot of credibility by not just coming out and saying, I should not have said that. Jimmy Kimmel is not associated with Jeffrey Epstein.
Or did he? Is Disney the one that's now in a box here, Bill? Because for Disney, they've kind of boxed themselves in. Because if they actually take action, it's like a gift to the far right, who's going to say, look, we always said they were this big woke company. Now they've shut up Pat McAfee. Now they've shut down Aaron Rodgers. And Pat McAfee, come to us. You don't need that big conglomerate anymore. Did Disney just prove that McAfee is more powerful than they are?
In a way, yes. I will say I think McAfee making the announcement that he wasn't going to come back on was probably driven by Disney. I think Disney put pressure on him. That's what I would expect. But I think they can't get out of this. You're absolutely right, because if they now do the right thing and order him not to have Rodgers on, they'll inflame the right again. But so what? I mean, so what? What is Disney really standing for here? Are they going to let their star? Jimmy Kimmel is also very important to them. He's on 5 nights a week on their dying network, which doesn't have much else to put on. He's also the host of their biggest show of the year, the Oscars, is going to come on. He's the host. Do they really want this? They want their star to be maligned this way? They have to make a decision here. Jimmy Kimmel does not deserve to be dragged through this, and Disney should make that clear to Pat McAfee that Rodgers should apologize or not come back on the air.
Sean, will we look back and say this is a cautionary tale, that when a network makes a short-term decision for somebody super popular and super buzzy, they run the risk of platforming misinformation, and then they're trapped.
And they're trapped, and they're causing themselves a headache. You know, Bill makes a great point about the Oscars. You see Jimmy Kimmel on ads last night. This big, huge broadcast. And what do people think about it? Oh, this whole controversy that was caused by somebody in the Disney umbrella. It's definitely, you know, Pat McAfee kind of came up from the grassroots. He was a former NFL punter, and he has kind of a bro-y, kind of loose, YouTube show that got popular. What's also interesting about this is you see some of the internet chatter about the ramblings of Aaron Rodgers recently. Even some Pat McAfee fans have expressed kind of a little bit of fatigue with the Aaron Rodgers conspiracy. So, you know, it might, yes, Aaron Rodgers is a ratings draw to a degree, but if he keeps doing this, it's going to cause Disney a headache, and it also might hurt Pat McAfee's show.